Okay, today we're gonna compare a ton of different lenses, some of my favorite cinema glass right now, to see the real difference between spherical and anamorphic lenses. We're gonna compare spherical lenses to 133 squeeze anamorphic lenses to the big boys 2x squeeze anamorphic lenses. For spherical, we have the DZO VESPID prime lenses, which are some of the most affordable full frame cine glass that you can get right now that are also really, really nice. They're small and light for cinema lenses, they're well built and just overall great image. Then as we step into the anamorphic, we have these incredible lenses from Viltrox. These are full frame anamorphic lenses, 1.33 squeeze, which are some of the coolest lenses I've seen in a while. Not just because the outside is like ridiculously cool, like Stormtrooper style, but also I'm kind of liking the 1.33 squeeze. First off, because it gives us some of that anamorphic characteristic, that look, but also I like the aspect ratio. There's a lot more versatility there. On anamorphic lenses, the bigger the squeeze is, the more you get of those anamorphic characteristics and the more the field of view widens. But because you're getting this wider and wider field of view, you're getting bigger and bigger and bigger crop bars, which if you don't want to get kind of forced into an aspect ratio can be a bad thing. But Hollywood still loves the 2x squeeze, and that's when the Atlas Orion anamorphics come in. These things are a beast. They're so well built and they are also huge. Like, just compare this 80 mil anamorphic to this 75 mil spherical. Look at that size difference. It's giant. These are 2x squeeze, which means you get that super wide field of view and a ton of those anamorphic characteristics that we all love. But they're also pretty dang big and expensive. So what are the prices of these? These Atlas Orions are about $10,000 a lens. The Viltrox lenses, they are about $2,800 a lens, so a lot more affordable there. And then these VESPID primes are somewhere around $1,400, which is pretty great for a nice set of spherical lenses. So let's take a look at the lenses and kind of compare and see what we can learn. But first, if you need music, sound effects, and stock footage for your videos like I do every single day that I'm a filmmaker, everything in this video, from the music, the sound effects, to those really cool film overlays, is from Artlist. Search for music by mood, video theme, genre, or instrument. I like to search by mood because I find that that's the easiest way of describing what I'm looking for, and then qualifying it with a few more things in the genre. For example, I like retro and electronic, 80s all day. So many songs that you can use. They have tons of sound effects, which is kind of that secret spice that a lot of people are just missing in their videos. If they just added sound effects and they kind of sound design their videos, they would be so much better. It's a super affordable subscription, and now they even have a plan that includes stock footage, and the quality on there is so high. And they have a new feature where AI suggests sound effects for that stock footage, making it so fast and easy for you. I literally could not do YouTube without Artlist, so thank you so much for giving me the tools to do my job, and thank you so much for sponsoring this video. All right, let's start with the DZO VESPIDS. These look really great. They surprised me. The color rendition is really nice on these. They're T2.1 except for the 60 mil, and I don't know if others are 2.8, but they're really fast. The bokeh is pretty nice and circular, especially towards the middle, towards the outsides. They get a little wonky, but honestly, I'm not really bothered by that. And actually, they kind of have some sort of cool flares. I kind of wish that we were given more flares even in spherical lenses. I don't know if you guys knew, they just kind of put coatings over the lenses nowadays so that they don't flare, and I kind of want some flare. I kind of want some, you know, interesting characteristics, and these have some interesting flares. I kind of like that. It's such a great affordable cinema lens kit, and these are small and light. I could not hype these up more. I really think this is a great option for those of us who can't afford those like crazy like Airy primes, you know, $20,000-$30,000 a lens. These are awesome. And I gotta say, the biggest surprise for me is how good the colors are. I think this is a kit worth owning if you can. Let's also throw in a wild card there. This company called Zhonggi, I don't know if I'm saying that right. This is a Speedmaster 50mm T1.0. Full frame. This is a full frame lens that's T1.0. You heard me right. That's a T1. That's wild. First off, I gotta say that the colors don't look super great in terms of color rendition. It definitely skews pretty heavy to the green, but a T1 on a full frame Alexa Mini LF is pretty crazy. I feel like I need to test this thing out more and just play around with it because this is wild. And I think they're making a 35mm, or they have a 35mm in this. That I'm like super curious about, because 35mm T1, that's nuts. Then let's look at the Viltrox Anamorphics. And these are really nice. The first thing I noticed is that they're very sharp, even wide open. So these are actually T2, and they're not like, they're pretty big, especially if you're just used to, you know, like your typical photo mirrorless camera lenses. It's definitely bigger than that, but they're pretty, you know, look at the size difference there. This is the smallest one. These are pretty good sized. And they're all the same size. They have a 75mm, a 50mm, and a 35mm, which is really nice, especially if you're doing any like gimbal work or anything like that. You can just swap and not have to rebalance. The bokeh is pretty cool, especially towards the center, towards the edges. It gets a little bit wonkier. But the closest minimum focus distance is 2.7 feet, and then on the 75mm, it's 3.3 feet, which isn't quite the best, especially on the 35mm. I feel like I just need to get a little bit closer, but that's kind of a typical thing of anamorphic lenses. It's just one of those things that you have to deal with, and you have to do diopters and stuff. It's super annoying. So I wish I had a little bit closer focus distance. That's probably my biggest complaint about this set of lenses. They're really great, but that could be a little bit better. The color rendition isn't as good as the Desios. I feel like it skews a little bit more green, but it's still really nice. And the flares, you gotta love the flares. They're blue, which for some people can be annoying, but I do like that they're not like crazy. They don't flare out super easily, and so you have a little bit more control over the flares, especially since they're blue. I would rather have it that way because there's times when you just don't want that blue look. It kind of just, I don't know, it signifies more of a sci-fi look more often than not. And that's not always what you want. This is a great set of lenses, especially since they're not insanely priced, which the Atlas Orions aren't an insane price, but they are definitely expensive at $10,000. But right away, you see what you're paying for. The color rendition is so nice. They're a little soft, wide open, but I'm kind of okay with that, to be honest. The color, even without any correction, just looks so nice to me. It's just really flattering. The bokeh is really nice. I like that skinny oval look on these 2x anamorphics. The contrast is nice, especially when you compare to the Viltrox. The Orions definitely have a much nicer, like a less harsh, less contrasty look, whereas the Viltroxes are a little bit more contrasty. And the flares, they are just so freaking cool. They just look so organic and nice. And they actually have two different versions. So they have the original that has like a blue streak anamorphic flare like we're kind of used to, and then they have the silver version, which I actually have the 32mm silver version, and that just has more of like a neutral flare, and I actually really like that, just because it gives you way more versatility. It doesn't kind of signify or tell the audience that we're in a sci-fi film. I feel like this is just way more versatile. I think I'd go for the silver versions for sure. And they have really nice minimum focus distance. The 32mm can actually go to 1 3/4 feet, which is really nice. You can actually get kind of like a nice close-up almost with this super wide look, which is like a very trippy, weird look, but I love it. The biggest problem would be obviously the price, but also these are huge, especially this 80mm. It's giant. It's so heavy. These are like toy lenses compared to this thing. So there's some downsides for sure. It's really interesting comparing the DZO VESPID 35mm spherical lens to the 35mm Viltrox lens to the 32, I don't have a 35, Atlas Orion lens. They're just so different looking, even though they're technically the same focal length, but that's just the power of spherical and anamorphic and changing that squeeze factor. And if we're talking about anamorphic lenses, I feel like the three main characteristics are that oval bokeh, which just has a really nice way of making the backgrounds look cinematic, that's for lack of a better word. The flares, which obviously a lot of people like, that for me isn't that big of a thing. And then the super wide field of view, which is, it's kind of hard to explain. It's kind of like you're getting a 16mm in terms of how wide it is, but then it looks like a 32mm. That's essentially what's happening. So you're getting like a really nice cinematic look, but you're getting just way more space on the edges. And ever since I started getting into filmmaking, I was like, how the heck do they do that? And that's anamorphic lenses. And the bigger the squeeze, the more you get of that same effect. So 1.33 squeeze, you're gonna get a little bit of that effect. It's gonna be a little bit wider. 2x squeeze, you're gonna get a really, really wide image. Essentially, when it says, for example, 40mm on this, you're getting 40mm like vertical focal length, but then in terms of width, because it's 2x squeeze, you're getting more like a 20mm, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? So another example, we have an 80mm here, which in terms of vertical would be like an 80mm spherical, so almost like the 75mm. But then in terms of width, you're getting about a 40mm focal length width, which is really cool, but also a little mind-boggling at the same time how that works. And then let's talk about aspect ratios. It all depends on what camera sensor you're using to start with. If you're on a mirrorless camera, you're most likely on a 16:9 sensor, with some exceptions of course, but then there's cinema cameras that can do, for example, the Mini LF does 3:2, and then some of the other, for example, Aries do 4:3. Why does this matter? Well, because the anamorphics widen the field of view. Your aspect ratio changes depending on what your starting sensor size was. So, for example, if you're on a 16:9 sensor and you put on a 2x squeeze anamorphic lens, you're just gonna get like this little sliver of an aspect ratio. It's not very usable. But you put on the 1.33 squeeze, and now you have this really nice 235:1 aspect ratio, which is a very popular aspect ratio. But then if we take the 2x squeeze and put it on the Mini LF, which is 3:2, then we get that same 2.4:1 aspect ratio. Again, very cinematic, very common, looks super cool. And that's one of the biggest reasons I like these Viltrox 133 squeeze lenses, is because you can just use it on more cameras without having like a crazy sliver of an aspect ratio or having to kind of zoom in on that afterwards. Especially if I put these on my 3:2 sensor Alexa Mini LF, then I almost get like a 16:9, and I could do all sorts of stuff with that. And then the question is, which is better? Neither. It's just a matter of what you like and what you need for your project. You know, Roger Deakins, he loves spherical lenses, shoots mostly spherical. Greg Fraser, he uses a lot of anamorphic lenses, and sometimes it's just project by project what fits that story. Is 133 better than 2? Not really. 2 is a lot more common in Hollywood, but 133 I feel like for a lot of people would just be more advantageous. Or just get spherical, because then you can use that for everything and you don't have to deal with, you know, crappy minimum focus distances. These can go really, really close, like a little too close. They're all great for different reasons. And funny enough, even though we've been talking a lot about that 2.4:1 aspect ratio that's really popular, I kind of feel like we're just gonna start seeing more and more of the 3:2 or even 4:3 aspect ratios, because a lot of people are using cameras like these with spherical lenses and getting that extra top and bottom, and they're kind of liking it. And that just might grow on us, and it might become the new, instead of having the crop bars on top and bottom, we have them down the sides. And also for IMAX and all of that stuff, it's all different aspect ratios. I'm gonna go see Oppenheimer again, this time in 70mm IMAX, so I'm very, very excited about that. All right, I hope you guys liked this comparison of the different lenses. I learned a lot. I hope you learned a lot. It's very interesting seeing side by side, same scenarios, just how different each lens can be. All right, that's it for me. Hope you guys have a good one. Bye.